Hi guys, my name is Danae Brazel and today we're here to do my mid-season F1 driver ratings for 2026. I've gone through all of my ratings for the season so far and calculated the average grade for each driver. So we're going to go through that. I'm going to go from 22nd to 1st. And essentially we're just going to go through my feelings on each driver for the season and also kind of whether I agree with where they've ended up in the standings of my averages so far, because there are some here that I was shocked about where they'd kind of ended up. So I thought that would be interesting. So let's get into it, starting with 22nd. Our lowest rated driver so far is Valtteri Bottas, who I have given a 5.1 average. I think that this rating says quite a bit about kind of the back of the field and how, like, even though like he's last, it's still a 5.1, like it's still an average grade. I do think that says something about how difficult it has been to grade the drivers at the back because of the poor machinery they're working with. And actually in general, I would say a lot of these averages, my difficulties in rating have come from these regulations of car and the fact that we are not provided with enough technical information a lot of the time to fully understand what things are driver error versus what things are issues with the cars. Which also, speaking of, do you guys want a video about Stefano Domenicali's recent comments about the regulations and viewers' response to that? Because I could not believe what I was reading and how frankly stupid he sounded in some of those statements. So if you would like me to expand on my thoughts there and about my thoughts on the regulations so far, let me know. But yeah, for Valtteri, I mean, the Cadillac we know is not a good car, very unreliable, it's slow, things that we did expect because obviously it's their first year on the grid. Like, I'm not shocked by the state of the Cadillac, obviously, but yeah, Valtteri obviously is worse than his teammate, he's worse than Perez. I predicted that pre-season. I feel like lots of people assumed Perez would be worse because of the end of his run at Red Bull, but I was fully convinced that Valtteri would be worse, and I was correct there. So I think, yeah, maybe it's a little lower than I thought. Like, I didn't think he'd be dead last, but it's not far off kind of where I assumed Valtteri Bottas would end up. Next up in 21st, we have Lance Stroll. This is kind of where I thought Lance would be. I thought he'd be at the back. I would say this is a very good F1 grid. I'd say we don't have any real, like, terrible drivers here. So Lance being down this low with a 5.4, it isn't bad. I don't think he's driven horrifically considering the state of the car. Again, I even think that the Aston Martin being so bad might have flattered Lance Stroll a little bit, because a lot of the time we haven't been able to determine the gap really between him and Alonso, except for in qualifying when the car works. So I actually think now that we've seen these upgrades on the Aston Martin, that will really show the difference in that gap. So I actually do expect him to probably fall into last if he keeps driving his current form, because it still hasn't been great. Silverstone really comes to mind as just being an absolute joke of driving in the sprint. Him opposite locking the steering in every corner for no fucking reason was absurd. And yeah, aside from that, pretty anonymous from Stroll, which I do think an anonymous season from him isn't too bad, considering normally when we see Lance Stroll it's not for positive reasons. But yeah, it's just the car has made it difficult to determine a lot with him. I really do think he's been flattered by it a little bit, but even then he's still second worst, so I can't say it's flattered him too much. Next up in 20th, we have Alex Albon. This hurts a little for me. He's got a 5.5 out of 10, so really like only 0.1 ahead of Stroll. I do think this is a little lower than I would have put Alex, like based on like how I'm feeling, like not on averages. But it hasn't been a great time. Again, the Williams car has been bad all season. The upgrades have not worked. You know, they put all this effort into removing weight from the car, but the car has not gotten faster as a result. So I really don't understand what is going wrong. It feels like Williams is just on a downward spiral. And unfortunately for Alex Albon, he's kind of trapped on that ship now. So, yes, I don't have a lot to say about Alex Albon. It feels like it's been a very anonymous season. He's been consistently slower than his teammate. And yeah, I think a 5.5, it's very slightly above average. I think that's, like, it's decent enough. He gets the car across the line when needed. I will say too, Alex Albon has been harmed by Williams constantly putting him on very weird strategies, like deciding halfway through the race that it's not really worthwhile for them to compete, so they then pit him 6 times. So I do think that also makes it difficult to give Alex Albon ratings in general. But yeah, he's still been consistently slower than his teammate. I wouldn't have put him 20th necessarily, but that is where he's ended up on average. Next up we have Sergio Perez, who I gave a 5.7 average, which I actually think is pretty decent from Perez. He has not driven badly at all. Again, obviously the Cadillac is slow, it's unreliable. There's also the issue too with a lot of these backmarket teams, which is that they're not able to give their upgrades an equal pace. So oftentimes, like, Perez had a better car or Bottas has had a better car. Similar things have also been happening with Haas, and we'll talk about that when we get to Ocon and Behrman. But yeah, makes it difficult to give a really fair comparison. But I will say that I think Sergio Perez has been definitively better than Valtteri Bottas across the season so far, and I do expect that to continue. I believed that Perez would be better this season. I'm glad to be correct in that. And I think, yeah, his average shows like it's a good, decent lot of driving, especially considering a car that does not work very well. I mean, in the first few races, the mirrors were constantly flying off it. You know, we've watched Perez's like front suspension cave in randomly. We've seen it all, and he's still managed to, I think, put together some pretty decent drives. So for that, I think a 5.7 average is quite good. Next up, in 18th, is Esteban Ocon, also with a 5.7. Essentially, for drivers that have the same average, I have put the driver with the highest ranking in the official F1 standings ahead. That is how I have decided to put that, because there were a couple drivers that had the same ratings on average, but that was just the easiest way for me to put it based on championship points. So therefore, Esteban Ocon is technically higher than Sergio Perez, but they are equal on average. Ocon has had probably one of his worst seasons this year. Now obviously there is the car difference situation between him and Behrman, which Haas have alluded to a lot. We don't fully understand what's going on there though, but even then, Ocon has been consistently, definitively slower than Ollie Behrman by a lot. A lot of the time it has been by a very significant margin. I think Esteban is just not on it at all this season. I don't know what's going on. I do think he is probably the driver most at risk for this being his final season in the sport, which it does make me a bit sad because I do like Esteban Ocon, but this season he's just not done well enough. He doesn't even keep up with Behrman a lot of the time. He is so far down. Obviously Hungary was kind of the first example of him outdriving Ollie, but aside from that, it's been a pretty bad season for Esteban so far. Unless he really turns things around, I think he is majorly under threat, because I think Haas, they have so many drivers in the wings they could put in. I think either Fornaroli or Kamara will take that seat. And yeah, it's unfortunate, but to be consistently outdriven by your teammate who's only on his second season, I think is just not a good enough showing for Esteban. And honestly, I think a 5.7 rating feels a little more positive than even I thought he was going to receive. Next up in 17th, we have Carlos Sainz with a 5.9 average. I think Carlos Sainz is majorly harmed by the Williams car this season, and also I'd say his rating has been significantly impacted by his incidents in Hungary, shall we say. Yeah, it's been a season where Sainz is consistently faster than Albon, but the car is still shit. So he's only able to do so much, unfortunately. I don't think Carlos is driven badly by any means. I really do think a lot of this rating and being this down the order is due to the Williams car just being bad and also quite difficult to rate. But I would also say, like, Sainz hasn't driven perfectly either. Again, Hungary being kind of the example that's fresh in everyone's minds, and that is, you know, I don't give out a lot of like extreme low grades like that, so that 3 has certainly shifted things. But yeah, I think it's been decent enough from Sainz considering the machinery he's working with. I haven't really got a lot to say. I don't think he hasn't had any real standout drives either, so 17th feels a little harsh, but now when I look at who's ahead, I'm kind of not shocked. In 16th place, we have Fernando Alonso with a 6.3, which I actually am a little shocked that Alonso is this high. But then when I consider, like, I do think he has maximised the Aston Martin package whenever possible. Even though the car has been completely shit, it was absolutely undrivable in the opening of the season, I still think Fernando Alonso has done what he always does, which is that, like, if you give him any ounce of a car that's worth driving, he can drag something out of it. And so I think he's actually driven consistently pretty well, even though, like, the results obviously don't show that because the car is awful. Even, you know, the best result he could get is 18th. But he still achieved that when possible. And so I do think he's driven a pretty decent season considering, again, the state of the car. So in 15th, we have Franco Colapinto, also with a 6.3. But obviously, he has more points than Alonso in the championship, so he's rated higher. I think Colapinto has put together a pretty decent midfield driver season. I actually kind of expected him to be a little higher on this, maybe. Like, I don't know, 15th when I say it sounds low, but then I guess, again, when I think about who's ahead, it's accurate. But no, I think Franco's done a good job with the Alpine this season. He's always been a little slower than Gasly, that's for sure, but I do think he's had a good run of races with decent results. He hasn't gotten into any major incidents that I can recall right now, which I do think is a big change for Franco. And I think, yeah, he's just done his job, which is, you know, bank some points when he can, put in some decent drives. I do think he's done enough to keep the Alpine seat. However, Flavio Briatore is certainly a very fickle man, so whether he actually rewards Franco with another year for his good driving is a different story, especially when there are so many junior drivers signed to Alpine. I do think that Franco is kind of always at risk just because Flavio Briatore on a whim could decide he doesn't want him in the car anymore. But I do think Franco has done a pretty good job this season. So I think, yeah, 6.3 is a decent average. I almost expected him to be a little closer to a 7 maybe, but I don't think it's too bad. Actually, next two drivers I'm going to talk about at the same time because there's both of the Audi drivers in 13th and 14th with the same average rating somehow. So both Hulkenberg and Bortoleto have got a 6.5 average and they are equal 13th, 14th. So really, I have the same things to talk about with both of them. I think they've both done a decent job with the car they've been given. I think the Audi is fast for the midfield, but very unreliable, as we've seen. But I think they've done a pretty good job managing with that. They've both brought home points. They've both done a pretty good job overall. I think they're a good driver lineup. And I do think Audi should keep the same lineup for another year, I think. Because I really do think Nico Hulkenberg will retire after however long he does with this team. So I think another season of the Hulkenberg-Bortoleto team would be good. And yeah, they've both done decent drives. I think Bortoleto has been very impressive for his second season. Again, considering the machinery he has to work with, I think he's put in some good drives, bagged some points. I think Hulkenberg, as always, gets what he can out of a car, and I think he's done that as well. So I'm not too shocked that they're both so close together. I just didn't think they would be identical on average. Next up in 12th is Ollie Bearman, who I've given a 6.8 on average, and I think that is a good place for Ollie Bearman. He has consistently driven the Haas to the maximum of what's capable, or even a little more, I'd say. He really banked good points and took advantage of when the car was good at the beginning of the season, and it is just unfortunate for him that the form of the car has fallen off so significantly as we have approached the mid-season. But yeah, he's outdriven Ocon by a fucking mile every week. He's been fantastic across the season, as I expected from him. I think he and Antonelli are the two of like last year's rookie class that I think the highest of. I kind of can't wait for when Behrman gets put in a leading team, because I do think he will be a real threat. I think he will easily be a race winner, a multi-time race winner at that. I don't even think that's a question. And yeah, I think he's driven very well this season. Although I will say, how did no one in my comments tell me that I rated Ollie too high for last week in Hungary? I didn't realise until after I had filmed and edited already. Then I was scrolling Twitter and saw just how nightmarish of a race Ollie had last week. Because what the fuck do you mean he spun out on his own and he was slow? He had an absolute nightmare. He impeded people, like absolute shit show from Ollie, and I missed all of it. I would not have given him a 5 if I had known that last week. But yeah, aside from that, he's been very good this season. So yeah, I think 12th is kind of where I imagined Ollie Behrman would end up, and I think that's a good space for him. Next up in 11th is Isaac Hadjar with an average of 7, just straight 7. I think that's where I expect Isaac to be. He's done a good job with the Red Bull he's been given. His worst weekend is obviously Miami, was a complete fucking nightmare. But aside from that, he hasn't had any really awful ones. Of course, the Red Bull has been a bit unreliable. It's been a real handful to drive for both him and Max, and I think Isaac has managed it well. I think he's finally broken the curse of the second Red Bull driver, which I did predict in the pre-season, because the new regulations weren't going to have Red Bull show up with a car so tailored to Max's choices yet. And I think Isaac has taken advantage of this car, and I think these regulations have suited him quite well, especially considering like the poor race starts that have been out of his hands. Things have certainly not always been lucky for Isaac this season, but I think he's done a good, decent job. And I think an average rating of 7 is exactly where I assumed he would be. And I even think 11th in the standings is pretty good as well, and kind of where I would place him if I was doing this a different way. So now we are entering the top 10, starting with Arvid Lindblad with an average of 7.1. I think that is kind of spot on where I assumed he'd be. Again, him and Isaac Hadjar, I would say, are pretty equal footing for me. And so he just edged him out by 0.1. It's really such a minuscule margin, that. But I think Arvid Lindblad has been majorly underrated, considering this is his rookie season and he has been consistently in the points. And I think more importantly for Arvid Lindblad is that we haven't seen a bunch of rookie errors from him. We haven't seen any like crashes or major incidents. He has kept out of trouble, he's kept it clean. He's an aggressive driver, but not a stupid one, which I think is the real positive. And I think this has been a very strong rookie showing. I think he's kept up with his more experienced teammate, and he's done a very, very good job this season so far. And I hope this form continues, because I think this is the start of a really good F1 career, and I hope it continues to be this good and he gets even better, because if this is his rookie driving, I think with a couple more years of experience he could be a real threat in a similar way that I was speaking about Ollie Behrman. Next up in 9th, this one hurts me to say a little bit, it's Oscar Piastri. I did not think he would be this low, but then I think about some of the driving he's done and it's hard to argue against. His average is a 7.2. It's just, this season has been a hard one, I think, to rate Oscar on in general. Obviously, the McLaren is majorly unreliable. They've obviously improved that, but there have been a lot of reliability problems on both sides of the McLaren garage all season so far. But I will say I think Piastri has had slightly less of the bad luck than Lando, which we'll talk about later on. But Oscar has just not been himself. I think like the same kind of Oscar we saw in the early parts of last season. I don't think he has driven super confidently at any point. And unfortunately, I think Hungary was the first time where I thought maybe he was getting there, or Japan as well. But both times he's been hit with bad luck, which is unfortunate. Also, obviously, the DNS in Australia was partially due to the car, but majority of the blame for that does lie with Oscar. And unfortunately, it just hasn't been great. He's been way off his teammate all season. There hasn't really been a single race where I felt like Oscar has been anywhere near as fast as Lando. And considering last season, they were so equal, it's been a real shock to see Oscar just not be really near him. And unfortunately, it has led to him being a 9th in this ranking. And that feels low when I say it, but then I look again at who's ahead and I'm kind of like, well, no, that's pretty fair for what he's done. And that sucks, but yeah, that's it for Oscar. Next up in 8th, we have Pierre Gasly with an average of a 7.3. Pierre Gasly has done a very good job with the machinery he has. He really does just extract what is possible out of that Alpine every week. He is consistently better than his teammate. He has kept out of trouble. I think it's just been a season of good, clean driving from Pierre Gasly and some impressive results in there as well. He's taken home good hauls of points and has been consistently in the front of the midfield. So I just think overall it's been a really good season so far, and I do expect that form to continue after the summer break. Next up in 7th, I'm terrified for the response to this one, but next up in 7th is George Russell with an average of a 7.3. So an equal average to Pierre Gasly. George Russell has had a very strange season so far. Obviously, he came into the season super confident. I would say maybe a little overconfident. You know, he knew he was coming into the fastest car. I think he thought this would be a very easy journey to the title. I think for one, he was not prepared for his teammate to have gotten as fucking good as he is, which we will talk about Kimi Antonelli soon. And then on top of that, it's been a season plagued with both misfortune and poor luck for George Russell, but also I think a lot of mistakes that I thought he was above making, especially after last season where I thought the caliber of his driving was phenomenal last season. He was consistently kind of right behind the leading trio of the title last season, being Max, Lando and Oscar. You know, George was kind of right was in amongst that or just behind it, which considering last year's Mercedes was very good. And so I think we all assumed like George would continue on that form this year and he would dominate this title with a car this good. And that just hasn't happened for him. It's been a really tough one to watch at times. There have been moments of really great driving, like he won in Australia and I think we all thought, oh no, is he about to just dominate this whole season? But then he's had a lot of issues, some not his fault, but also a major pace difference to Kimi Antonelli, which has now become a very consistent problem, that he is just nowhere near his teammate on pace, really at all, consistently down in qualifying. In the race, the pace isn't good. It's been hard to watch for George Russell, and more than anything, it's been quite baffling because I do think he is a better driver than what he's done this season. I just don't know what has gone on, and I just can't fully grasp why he's having such difficulties. But it has put him down in 7th. I think the other people have just really outdriven him, even though the machinery under him should give him better opportunities than he seems to have taken advantage of. Next up in 6th, the best of the midfield drivers easily was Liam Lawson with an average of a 7.5. Liam Lawson has been phenomenal this season. I really cannot stress enough, despite being from New Zealand and therefore I should be a Liam Lawson fan, I've never been the biggest fan of him, but I will say that this season he has been consistently really fucking good. And I was thinking about this over the past few days, and I think the main reason that Liam Lawson has gotten better this year is just he's not getting into stupid incidents anymore. I don't think he's driving angry anymore the way he definitely was when he first started when did he start when he did those few races when Daniel Ricciardo broke his wrist and stuff, he was driving super overly aggressively, and it led to incidents with Perez and other just messy driving. And I think what's really improved Liam Lawson as a driver this season is he has not gotten into these incidents, he's not gotten into these big crashes. He just shows up, gets the maximum out of that car every race, and takes home points. He just has stayed out of trouble, and I think has done a phenomenal job with that machinery. That V-Carb is a good car, obviously it is the best of the midfield by quite a bit, I'd say now. But yeah, he has still maximised it at every point, and I think he's done a phenomenal job so far this season. And I hope this form continues for him. I am concerned that somehow he is the Red Bull driver under threat right now because of Nikola Solov doing such a good job in F2, because there's no way he should be taken out of the seat at all. He has done a phenomenal job this season. I cannot rate him highly enough for it. We're now entering the top 5, and we're starting with Charles Leclerc with an average of 7.8. Charles Leclerc has had, I would say, a very strange season so far. If you had told me that Ferrari were going to have the second best car this season so far, I would have then assumed that Charles Leclerc was the one scoring the major points in that car, just based on kind of where we left things off last season and the form both Leclerc and Hamilton were in. However, Charles Leclerc has been a bit all over the place this season. He's had some really good races, also some good luck, I'd say, but he's been driving really well, and certainly more recently. It's weird because in the beginning of the season, Charles Leclerc was doing some good, decent driving. He was consistently a bit slower than Hamilton, but nothing to be concerned about. But then we entered that run with Monaco and Miami, where he was just absolutely all over the place. Mistakes and crashes, just a real nightmare run. And he has since come back into a better form, obviously won in Silverstone. He's been on the podium. He's been doing a good job again. But yeah, it's been a very weird season so far. I hope the good form continues now for Charles. I don't like seeing him perform badly, but yeah, that stretch where he would just keep crashing all the time because he was overdoing it with the car certainly has harmed his average pretty significantly. And yeah, has put him 5th. Next up is his teammate Lewis Hamilton with an 8.1 average. Now I will say I thought Lewis is going to be higher on this, to be fair. I kind of assumed he would be 2nd, and so I don't know if I should be concerned about my rating or what. I do think Lewis has been harmed a little bit by some of his mistakes more recently. They've given him penalties. Things such as speeding in the pit lane, just stupid little things that have cost him in results, and I think have cost his chance at really fighting Kimi Antonelli for the title, have lowered this average a bit. But I will say as well that the next, my 2nd, 3rd and 4th drivers are all very close together on average, and so know that rearranging those 3 will be quite easy for me. I could understand any order of these 3 drivers as we go through them, and this is just where Lewis has ended up for me so far. I do think he has more race wins in him this season. If Ferrari can also get their shit together and Lewis can stop getting stupid little penalties and stop making those sorts of mistakes, I think he could have a really good run. I think the Ferrari is more reliable than the Mercedes, and I do think he still has the opportunity to take advantage of that, but he needs to really lock in and just not make fucking mistakes like that. They're stupid mistakes, and they're so frustrating because they have massively impacted races where he should have been on the podium. He should have been on the podium in Hungary, and the fact that he wasn't because of minor things is so frustrating. I think that's why Lewis has ended up 4th in my averages, is just because while he's had a really, really good run this season, I cannot stress enough, he's had a fantastic run of races. It's just been minor things that have affected it. Next up in third is Lando Norris with an 8.2 average. So as I said, you know, second, third and fourth are all pretty interchangeable. This is why, because Lando's only 0.1 higher than Hamilton here. And I think this season has been Lando Norris at his best as a driver. Obviously, the McLaren has been super unreliable. There was a whole run for majority of the races this season where Lando couldn't go a single weekend without having a session interrupted by car problems. He's had an absolute nightmare with mechanical failures. But whenever the car has been working, Lando Norris has been at the front and super competitive. He's been fast. He's been, I think, a more intelligent driver this season. And I think he's been fucking phenomenal. I cannot stress enough how good I think Lando Norris has been this season. He's driven very, very well and maximised that McLaren whenever possible. Whenever that car works, he has maximised its capabilities, and that's all we can ask for from a driver. I think he's done a really good job. I am frustrated by McLaren not allowing him to make more strategy calls for himself, because he is trying to now. I think he's really come into his own as a driver now, having the title. I think it's taken the pressure off of him, especially when it became apparent he couldn't fight for the title and couldn't defend it, which I do think is unfortunate, that the car has meant he's not able to challenge for the title or defend his reign, because he's driven phenomenally, and if that car was better, I think he would be such a serious threat. And I do hope that McLaren do start improving the car more in the second half of the season, and we get to see more drives like we saw from him in Hungary. Because Lando Norris in this form, I think, is a very, very good driver. And I'm very happy to see it, because, I don't know, he didn't feel like the best driver for his championship season, obviously because Max went on that insane run. But I do think he's one of the best this season, pretty definitively. And so I think, yeah, third best is accurate for him. Now here's the part where people get mad at me and realise that my bias may have affected some averages. Because in second place is Max Verstappen with an 8.4. Now, as I said, I'm going to reiterate it one more time. Second, third and fourth. So Verstappen, Norris and Hamilton are all interchangeable. For me, this is just where the averages shook out. But they're literally all separated by 0.3. So, you know, it's not that crazy. But I think Max Verstappen, despite having a car that is slow, unreliable, a fucking hazard half the time, just an absolute nightmare piece of machinery, I still think he has driven phenomenally well this season. As always, Max Verstappen maximises what he's given or outdrives what he's given. Like, you should not have gotten second last week in Hungary. Somehow he managed it. The fact he's gone 4 podiums with this car in general is ridiculous. I know there's been mistakes from him pushing the car too hard, all of those things, but ultimately, like, we watch Max Verstappen because we want him to keep pushing. That is what makes him good, and sometimes the result of that isn't as positive, but he's still driven very, very well. I would understand people that would put him below Norris and Hamilton in their rating. I think that's fair enough. This is just where he's ended up for me. Obviously, I am biased. He's my favourite driver. I watch the sport because I love it, but also because I love Max Verstappen, and I will happily watch whatever else he chooses to drive. But I do think he's done a great job this season with what he's been given, especially because there have been races where what he's been given is very poor. And I do think as the season has progressed, it's only gotten better, and I hope that that trend continues post-summer break. And then finally, up in first, I think this is a shock to no one, our championship leader, Kimi Antonelli, with an average rating of 8.9. Kimi has absolutely exceeded all the expectations this season. It's his second season in Formula One, and he now has a very strong championship lead. He has majorly outdriven his far more experienced teammate. He has been consistently fast, consistently good. He's obviously had bad luck with reliability, as a lot of the drivers have had, but he's never let that affect his mentality or his focus. I think he has been clinical in his driving. Very, very few mistakes from Kimi as well, which I do think was the concern heading into the European leg of the season, because last year that was where things started to fall apart for him. Was as soon as I got to the European leg, it was just mistake after mistake. And I'm so glad to say that this season that hasn't happened. Obviously he's had several impressive wins, but I think especially in Monaco, that's the one that really stands out to me so far, was that Monaco drive. Just well managed, perfect driving from him there. And yeah, he's just been really fucking good. There isn't a lot to say about Kimi Antonelli other than that he's just been really good and really fast, and I think has shown an immense amount of progress since last season, and I think is terrifying for the rest of the grid to know that he is so young and so early in his career and he is this good already. But yeah, that is all for today. Those are my mid-season F1 driver ratings. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit the like button, and if you'd like to see even more from me, please subscribe. And if you'd like to see even more from me, you can follow me on Instagram, TikTok, Letterboxd, all those things are linked down below. On those places you can see what else I'm up to, my makeup and special effects work, film opinions, which is also included on this YouTube channel if you want to scroll back a bit. And yeah, that is all from me this week. I don't know quite what content I'll be making for the rest of the summer break. Let me know if you want me to talk about those comments from Stefano Domenicali recently, because I do have opinions there, or anything else. I might make more film commentary, I don't really know yet. We'll just see. The summer break is going to be an interesting one. I will hope to make at least 1 or 2 more videos during the break. But yeah, that is all for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.